Hey night owls, grab a mug of something warm. Trust me, after tonight's story, you'll never take a hot sip for granted again. Before we slip back to the year 1316, tap that like button if historical horror stories help you drift off, and slide down to the comments to tell me your coldest memory. Was it a power outage, a blizzard, a broken dorm room radiator at 3 a.m.? I'm nosy, I want to know. And if you're new here, subscribe so you won't miss the rest of this 7-part plunge into one winter so brutal that loaves froze solid on the hearth and songs turned to shivers mid-verse. Dim the lights, cue the white noise fan, settle beneath your coziest blanket, and let's tiptoe into a season where frost felt carnivorous. Imagine you're a baker's apprentice in a nameless village somewhere between Flanders and Franconia. Yesterday, you rose in darkness, shoveled last year's charcoal beneath the clay oven, and kneaded rye dough while your master dozed. That's routine. But today, the charcoal pile is gone, burned weeks earlier when the snow came too soon for the woodcutters. And the dough in your trough is a gray, unrisen lump. It's not your fault. The yeast is sluggish at these temperatures. Even the cat, who normally begs scraps, won't leave the rafters, her paws tucked like mittens beneath a fluff of fur. You crack ice off the water barrel, hoping to coax the starter alive. And that's when you realize the inside of the shop is colder than yesterday's street. Outdoors, the sky resembles hammered pewter, low, dull, spiteful. It's been that way since the previous spring when the rain refused to stop, drowning wheat sprouts in the fields until the soil itself soured. By midsummer of 1315, people were already talking about odd omens, halos around the sun, comets where none should be, and a red moon that dripped across the horizon like wax. Then came a harvest so pitiful the tithe barns rang hollow. Lords blamed lazy peasants, priests blamed collective sin. Farmers blamed basically everything. Witches, wolves, slippery saints who'd taken their miracles elsewhere. But blame does nothing to fill bellies or dry miles of rotting grain. You know this firsthand. Last week, an old woman tried to barter her only blanket for half a loaf. Your master refused, saying charity could wait until spring. She left with tears crusting into frost. Now it's early January 1316, and the cold has teeth. Church bells crack when they're rung too vigorously. Iron plows snap like brittle bones, and everyone walks slower, conserving energy the way a fox conserves heat, tight, deliberate, nose to chest. You stomp through drifts to the manor bakehouse where peasants queue before dawn with crooked baskets. They carry whatever remains, shriveled peas, worm-eaten apples, even the crumbs swept from meal sacks. They beg you to mix these with rye flour for a communal loaf. You tell them truth. There is no spare flour. The last delivery from Bruges never arrived. Rumor says the cart horses fell mid-journey, and the driver ate a saddle to stay alive. Sounds absurd, but in a famine, absurd stories breed like lice. You return home, your breath crystallizing into a cloud so thick you could carve runes in it. Your mother sits near a hearth that holds only ashes. She's knitting straw into mats for insulation, because real cloth costs more than ale these days. Two younger siblings share an onion like a candied treat, biting carefully so it lasts. They ask if you brought bread scraps. You shake your head, throat burning with guilt, because yesterday you secretly gnawed the bakery's burnt crusts before anyone else could claim them. Night slides down faster than usual, like some cosmic curtain eager to smother the world with yet another layer of black chill. You lie beneath a roof patched with frozen moss, listening to rafters creak under the weight of snow. The wind squeezes through gaps like a thief, plucking warmth from your straw mattress. Sleep comes in thin strips. Doze, shiver, wake, repeat, until a knock rattles the door before dawn. It's the reeve, the Lord's tax collector, cheeks chapped raw. He commands every household to send one member to the chapel for emergency prayers. The priest says we angered God, he mutters. Only penance can melt this curse. Your mother volunteers you. You trudge to the chapel, passing neighbors whose faces look carved from tallow. Inside, breath from 100 bodies hovers like steam over a cauldron. Father Benedict intones a litany so desperate it ricochets off icy stone. Lord, we confess sloth, gluttony, impure thoughts, though none of us have eaten or dallied in a year. No one laughs. Humor hibernated months ago. Days stack like tombstones. Grain stores vanish. Dogs disappear. There are whispers of people boiling belts or digging up graves for marrow, but you try not to listen until the butcher's boy confides that his uncle cooked the family's plow horse, sharing the hide among 4 households and selling the hooves for broth. Even so, the meat came riddled with disease. 3 children died by candlelight, bellies swelling like inflated skins. The priest refused burial in consecrated ground, claiming God abhors those who dine on beasts not properly bled. Yet he, too, looks thinner than a page of parchment. By Candlemas, the snow seizes watermills solid, halting whatever grain might still be ground. Instead, villagers carry sacks to the castle, hoping the millstones there still turn. The Lord's steward sees opportunity. He demands double toll, payable in silver or labor. Those without coins surrender their bodies, repairing battlements, clearing icicles the length of spears from arrow slits, or chopping wood in forests patrolled by wolves so starved they gnaw each other's tails. Each evening, you witness torches bobbing like fireflies along the parapets, accompanied by screams when sentries misstep and fall into drifts like burial mounds. One afternoon, a peddler limps into town, boots wrapped in rags. He carries a bundle of herbs and swears they ward off hunger. He'll trade for anything shiny, buttons, pins, broken buckles, because metal smelts into nails worth more than sanctuary. Some villagers buy his promise. Others chase him away, accusing him of selling witch weeds. His parting words freeze in the air. Spring won't save you. The sky is broken. Everyone understands what he means. Last summer's sun never really blazed. It hovered pale and watery, as if filtered through smoke. Grain seeds rotted, hay fermented, livestock miscarried. When winter arrived so early, it felt like God slammed the door on any hope of recovery. Yet humans cling stubbornly to rituals. On Shrove Tuesday, your village normally fries crepes in lard to greet Lent, but lard is a memory. So people fry nothing, merely chew handfuls of bran softened with snow and pretend it's festive. Children still chase each other with wooden masks, though their laughter sounds brittle, liable to snap. The mayor organizes a thaw feast, promising to kill the last remaining cow when daylight lingers past vespers. That day never comes. The cow collapses before the feast, tongue stiff, ribs like barrel staves protruding from hide. They butcher her anyway, dividing skinny cuts among 20 families, yours included. You chew leathery strips by the hearth, grateful yet terrified by how quickly they vanish. Then, sometime in mid-March, something stranger than hunger arrives. Silence. No ravens call at dawn, no dogs bark. Even the wind seems out of breath. Snow crystals stop swirling, suspended in dead air like dust motes in a cathedral sunbeam. People emerge, blinking. They whisper, "Perhaps winter's back is broken." But hope is fragile. The following night, clouds rumble in from the Atlantic, carrying yet another blizzard. Roofs cave, burying sleepers. Bread, once merely stale, now finishes baking solid in ovens whose fires can't outmuscle the cold. You crack a loaf against the table, it echoes like stone. Hunger is one thing, but teeth cracking on frozen bread? That's humiliation. Some families soak their loaves in beer just to dent them, until the beer itself freezes into amber slush. By Easter, desperate measures erupt into public view. The Lord declares field gleaning rights suspended. No one may gather stray grain, lest his own stores deplete. A mother caught pilfering dried peas from the castle granary is locked in a cage hung from the village elm. Townsfolk toss snowballs at her feet, not to torment her, but to melt and provide water. The parish clerk records in neat Latin, "For theft of 15 peas she was held 3 days. On the 4th she perished, and none took her place." These records survive centuries later, inked in iron gall that eats parchment like hunger eats flesh. And yet, amid this misery, bits of humanity endure. One dawn, you catch your sister teaching 3 neighbor kids a rhyme about warm countries. She says if they chant it while spinning in circles, the sun hears and hurries north. They spin until dizzy, fall giggling into snow. For a heartbeat, you remember what laughter felt like before famine. The moment passes, but not before planting a seed of defiance. If children can chase the sun with rhymes, maybe adults can chase solutions. So the village council calls another meeting in the frozen nave. They debate whether to petition the bishop for grain, though the bishop's own cellars are rumored empty. Finally, they decide to rebuild the communal oven closer to the hot springs 5 miles away. Water there never freezes, a miracle of geology, if not faith. You volunteer as courier to fetch stones for the new kiln. The journey is perilous. Snowdrifts hide crevasses, bandits prowl roads, and rumor warns of wolfmen, outlaws who wear stolen pelts and howl to scare travelers into dropping supplies. Carrying a sled piled with masonry, you trudge under a moon so bright it paints shadows in silver. Midway, you hear footsteps behind. You whirl, brandishing a splintery staff. A figure in tattered cloak raises gloved hands. It's the peddler, herb bundle smaller now. He offers you a stalk of angelica to chew, keeps the belly from thinking too loudly, he says, and in return asks for a single stone from your sled, claiming stones remember heat and ease joint pain. You shrug, trade, and trek on. At the springs, steam billows, smelling of eggs. You warm, numb fingers in the water, half tempted to stay forever. But duty drags you back. The return trip feels shorter, maybe because hope rides your sled alongside stones. By week's end, the new bakehouse breathes alive, chimney coughing steam into the iron sky. For the first time in months, villagers smell bread like childhood memory. It's still coarse, mixed with acorn meal and ground nettles, but it's bread, soft enough not to chip teeth. Yet victory is small. Grain stocks remain perilously low. One violent storm could erase everything. The reeve warns that next year's seed is already being eaten. The future is burning in the present's fire. Father Benedict preaches that Judgment Day might be near. People nod, not from belief, but exhaustion. You, however, cling to stubborn doubt. If God meant to end the world, why whisper hope through hot springs and herb peddlers? April drags like a wounded limb. Snow shrinks reluctantly, revealing fields crushed beneath ice. Farmers attempt plowing, but find soil waterlogged, earthworms floating like noodles. They sow barley anyway, praying for a merciful summer. You assist, throwing seeds that look too meager to matter. But hands need tasks, and tasks breed willpower. As embers fade, the village sings, voices cracking, half-forgotten melodies. But the sound is defiant, alive. You realize you've reached a turning point. Whether the harvest thrives or fails, whether wolves stalk the lanes or comets blaze overhead, your community has remembered how to sing at the dark. And that, you think, might just be the first true thaw. We'll stop here, right on that fragile note of almost hope, and pick up next time with what happens when summer 1316 finally arrives and brings problems every bit as chilling as the cold. If you need more story to lull you to sleep, let me know down below. The sun finally drags itself over the horizon like a weary ox, flooding the fields with a diluted gold that feels suspicious after so many months of pewter skies. You squint, half convinced the light is a trick of exhaustion. But when warmth leaks through the thin wool of your tunic, you allow yourself a breath of optimism. Just one, careful not to waste it. Around you, neighbors hurry to capitalize on the moment. They yank open shutters that have been nailed shut against blizzards. They carry buckets to collect drip water from eaves. They even nod to one another, though no one goes so far as to smile. Smiles can jinx a fragile season. Father Benedict is first to break the hush. He stands atop the low church steps, arms raised, as if personally introducing spring to the parish. "We are spared," he proclaims. Then softer, "for now." That addendum has become his liturgical signature, every blessing stamped with a caution label. Folks shuffle closer, craving instructions. He assigns fast day rotations, because scarcity still prowls, and appoints you, the baker's apprentice, as one of 3 grain watchers. Your task: stand sentry over every seed sown in the communal plots. If a crow steals, you throw stones. If a child steals, you gently scold the parents. No one wants another hanging. Cropland that once looked like a drowned carpet now bristles with timid green. Barley shoots poke out, fragile as quills. But good fortune has conditions. The rains never stop. Not blizzards now, but cold showers that hammer seedlings flat and leave slime trails on everything. You spend mornings rescuing sprouts, pushing bent stalks back upright with fingers numb from mud. The reeve passes by, coat hem spattered, muttering that mold loves wet summers. "If the rot comes, we'll wish the snow had stayed," he says. You roll that dread around in your head like a pebble in a boot. On Whitsun, children decorate doorways with hawthorn and sing verses they barely remember. You watch them improvise lyrics about saints who chase mildew from grain. Their voices mingle with the choirs inside the church, where damp stone walls sweat like horses. During Mass, Father Benedict moves the reliquary closer to the altar candles, explaining that holy bones hate moisture. You wonder if bones can truly hate. Yours ache, but feel too weary for emotions. Mid-June delivers an unexpected visitor. Sir Hugo de Vries, a minor knight whose estate sits 4 leagues east. He arrives on a mud-flecked palfrey, breastplate tarnished. He pledges protection to the village, provided you can spare 20 sacks of barley come harvest. It's extortion disguised as chivalry, but the mayor nods, because crossbow bolts cost lives. Sir Hugo leaves 2 squires to assist with field duties. Their main contribution is ogling the miller's daughter and practicing sword swings at scarecrows that were meant to guard seedlings. You retrieve 1 fallen scarecrow, restake it, and whisper apologies to the barley. The peddler surfaces again, one sticky twilight, herb satchel leaner still. He claims to have walked through 5 villages where people grind beech bark into flour. He trades you another angelica stalk for 2 handfuls of nettle seeds, swears they'll sprout no matter the damp. Plant them on the west bank, he advises. Sun kisses there first. You obey. A week later, tender green spikes emerge, promising vitamin-rich soup come high summer. Small victories feel scandalously luxurious. Then thunderheads swarm so thick they blot out afternoon like a slammed lid. Rain slashes sideways, shredding barley heads just starting to wink gold. You leap between rows, propping stems with split sticks. Others rig makeshift gutters so water channels away instead of drowning roots. For 3 days the storm sits overhead, grumbling. Nights echo with the crash of branches and the muted weeping of families whose thatch roofs finally surrender. You huddle beneath oiled cloth in the bakehouse, sharing floor space with the cat and the last sack of salt. Water seeps anyway, pooling around your ankles until dawn reveals a landscape equal parts swamp and cemetery. Birds littered like soaked parchment across furrows. A calf tangled in driftwood, and, worst, a man face down in the mill race, body bloated, clothes ballooning like sails. Father Benedict officiates a field burial. No coffin, just linen strips and a prayer shortened for fear of more rain. Sir Hugo's squires handle the digging, complaining that muck ruins their boots. You notice one squire's cheeks glossed with fever sweat. A day later, he collapses outside the tavern, skin mottled purple. People whisper about camp fever, firepox, the soldier's curse. Whatever it is, it spreads quick as rumor. 3 villagers spike fevers by sunset. You bake onion poultice bread, an old remedy that steams sweet, hoping its scent alone heals. It doesn't. Father Benedict orders the chapel doors barred, turning it into a quarantine ward. From outside, you hear groans rising like off-key hymns. While illness clutches the village, the fields can't pause. Grain watchers become grave watchers, counting losses in both sheaves and souls. You rotate through shifts with bleary eyes. Barley tassels ripple like miniature banners of surrender. The reeve announces a drastic measure, cutting the crop early, even half-ripe, to avoid total rot. Sir Hugo objects. He wants fatter kernels for his levy. An argument ignites beside the well, escalating until the knight backhands the reeve with mailed gauntlet. The sound, metal against flesh, rings louder than the church bell. Villagers freeze. You expect violence, maybe blood. Instead, the reeve straightens, spits pink, and says, "Then you harvest it." Sir Hugo blinks, realizes leverage evaporates when peasants simply refuse labor. 2 days later, he rides off, squires following, leaving only hoofprints rapidly filling with rain. Harvest begins under iron clouds. You wield a sickle so often your palm blisters despite leather wrappings. Women braid wet straw into ropes for binding sheaves. Children gather fallen heads to dry on cloth stretched across rafters. The yield is pitiful still. Kernels shrunken, husks mold-freckled, but food is food. You load bundles onto wooden sleds since wheels bog in mud. At the granary, you spread barley across slatted racks, building small fires beneath to smoke moisture away. The scent is somewhere between roasted nuts and a musty attic. In late July, a heat wave ambushes the valley. After months of damp chill, the sudden furnace stuns everyone. Water in barrels turns tepid, cheese sweats, half-dried barley cracks. The sun finally shows its pure face, but does so with cruelty, blazing away what little moisture still nourished vegetable patches. Beans wither, cabbages bolt. You pivot from praying for warmth to begging for clouds. People start sleeping outdoors on rooftops, hoping night breezes grant relief. Yet the heat brings flies, and flies trail sickness. One dawn, you wake to find your Angelica bed ravaged by locusts. They arrived under cover of starless dark, descending in a chittering blanket. They're gone now, leaving stalks stripped to pale spines. You crush a locust corpse beneath your heel and feel nothing. Resignation is the final stage of weather grief. Yet nature offers strange compensations. Wild berry bushes along the ridge burst with fruit sweet as stolen honey, thanks to the extended sun. Children return with violet-stained mouths, triumph shining through ribs. You gather 2 baskets, set them drying atop the bakehouse roof, and dream of winter pies that might taste like forgiveness. At August's midpoint, the wind changes. A scent rides it, subtle, peppery. Smoke? You climb the bell tower for perspective. The western horizon shimmers with a haze that flickers orange at dusk. Forest fire, likely sparked by heat-brittle pines. Flames are leagues away, but travel inside every roomer. By week's end, fine ash drifts in, settling on your cooling racks, dusting barley with gray like early snow. You devise cloth canopies to shield grain, and for once, villagers praise your ingenuity. Even Father Benedict nods, high confirmation indeed. September steps in wearing a cloak of moderate temperatures and timid blue skies. Barley sacks get divided, a quarter tithe to the Lord, absent now, still sulking in his fort, a tenth to the church, and the bare remainder to feed the village through winter. Calculations prove bleak. 3 mouthfuls of bread per person per day, supplemented by beets and whatever rabbits can be snared. Father Benedict proposes diluting breads with ground chestnut to stretch supplies. You volunteer to test loaves. The taste is oddly sweet, texture dense. It'll do. But one last calamity slinks forward. Rats. Ships on the Rhine, desperate to unload grain before mold sets, jettison infested sacks near docks. Rodents swarm upriver, following scent like arrows to your newly stored harvest. At night, you hear them scratching inside walls, a prickling orchestra. You set traps baited with spoiled lard. The cat proves worth her salt, leaving sacrifices on thresholds. Yet, for every rat slain, 2 appear. Some villagers suggest releasing terriers from the manor kennel. Others argue the dogs might eat more grain than they save. Debate spirals until a lantern topples during council argument, igniting straw. Flames lick the granary corner before buckets smother it. But panic steals hours you can't spare. Through all this, whispers persist. Merchants south of the Alps talk of abundant crops, wine flowing like pre-famine times. Some families consider migration, sell huts, herd goats along imperial roads, chase rumors. You weigh the notion during sleepless hours while the cat purrs on your shins. Leave ancestral graves or gamble everything on distant fields. Ultimately, the decision arrives by dawn chill. Your mother vows to stay. Our roots reach deeper than this winter, she says. The phrase anchors you. The first frost of autumn dusts rooftops silver. But this frost feels different, normal, seasonal, almost polite. You break thin ice on the well, splash face, and notice something you haven't seen since childhood. Your breath curls white, but the air around it holds no malice. It's just cold, not predatory. Church bells ring without cracking, bread cools without petrifying. Even rats seem less frenzied, as if they too sense equilibrium returning. One evening, Father Benedict calls a lantern procession to honor the dead of the past year. Villagers carve crude faces into turnips, insert tallow stubs, and walk the lanes singing a hymn stitched from sorrow and gratitude. You carry a loaf still warm, intending to place it on the communal altar. As song rises, you recall each stage of this nightmare: ice, rain, rot, fever, flame, and realize you survived them all. Not unscathed, but unbroken. You reach the chapel steps, set down the loaf, and feel a hand on your shoulder. It's the herb peddler again, face gaunt, yet eyes bright. He whispers, "Winter returns, always, but remember, so do we." He presses a final gift into your palm, a pouch of saffron threads, precious beyond gold. "For a celebratory loaf," he says, vanishing into lantern glow. That night, you bake bread laced with saffron, its aroma weaving through houses, stirring dreams sweeter than memory. You slice it into thin pieces so everyone tastes at least a miracle's crumb. As villagers chew, silence blankets the square. Not stony silence of despair, but reverent hush of people who know they're sharing something sacramental. Proof that seasons turn, hunger wanes, and humans, like stubborn barley, keep standing back up. The chill that wakes you tonight isn't from the wind. It comes from a memory that creeps beneath your blanket long before dawn. Even in early spring, the beds of the survivors carry phantom frost. You flip the blanket back, feel the cool planks underfoot, and follow the smell of ember-dusted grain to the bakehouse. One breath of the saffron loaf you left to rise reminds you, yes, yesterday's miracle was real. But miracles go stale if you hoard them. So, quick favor before we wade into the next stretch of history. Hit that like button the way a desperate villager thumps a grain sack. Share this tale with anyone who thinks weather reports can't be terrifying. And drop a comment telling me which season you'd have dreaded most in 1316. Oh, and if you're new here, subscribe. We've got 4 more nightmarish seasons and a pile of medieval reforms to navigate together. Lanterns ready? Let's walk. You carry the cooling saffron loaf through damp streets toward Father Benedict's cottage, hoping he'll bless it over morning prayers. The air tastes of wood ash and thawed earth. No blizzard howls, no torrential rain, only the steady drip of meltwater from eaves. Villagers cluster around fire pits, palms splayed to absorb warmth that feels foreign after months of deprivation. Yet every conversation bends toward the same question. What do we build now that the world hasn't ended after all? The Reeve calls a council in the half-collapsed tithe barn. Its roof, punched through by wet snow back in February, now frames a rectangle of gray sky. You sit on a barley sack, knees against your chin, and listen as topics spool out. Rat bounties, grain tariffs, repairs to the communal oven whose arch buckled mid-freeze. But one proposal grips the room like frost, instituting a parish granary charter, a binding rule that no lord or hungry mob can raid without collective consent. Sir Hugo isn't present to object. Rumor says he died of camp fever 2 valleys east, his armor pawned for wine. With his absence, villagers sense leverage. Father Benedict reads from a borrowed copy of Statuta de Annona, new statutes sent down from the crown after reports of famine reached London. The ink still smells wet. The law states that parish stores may, for the first time, override a lord's levy in crisis years. Lips part in astonishment. The king is choosing hungry peasants over petty knights? Perhaps the winter cracked more than just roof beams. A vote is taken at dusk. Hands rise, calloused, shaking, resolute. The charter passes unanimously. You're appointed warden of the granary ledgers because, as the Reeve notes, a baker already counts every crumb. Pride flares, then a tremor of fear. Mismanage this, and you could swing from the oak where thieves once dangled. May unfurls in fits. Sunlight lingers past supper, enough for children to chase each other around the graves newly filled by the famine. They weave between markers, shrieking with the reckless joy of those too young to remember the worst nights. You bake an experimental batch of bread. 1 part barley, 1 part chestnut, 1 part locust flour ground from the insects you'd stomped last summer. Surprisingly, the dough rises high, its crust thin as parchment. At market, you trade loaves for a pouch of Lombard pepper, luxury once unimaginable. Inflation after the famine has twisted prices. Herbs doubled, iron tripled, grain a coin you now guard like relics. Merchants crowd the crossroads again. They spill tales of distant realms that endured the great winter of 16. In Flanders, entire flocks of sheep froze mid-graze, carcasses stacked like ricks of firewood. In Saxony, miners hammered through ice to reach iron veins. One merchant claims Venice passed a law limiting funeral processions to a single candle per corpse to conserve wax. Another says France's queen distributed coin from the palace treasury, then ordered astrologers whipped when the heavens refused to thaw. Facts blur with gossip, but a pattern emerges. Climate has become everyone's monarch, unpredictable and absolute. By midsummer, your parish charter faces its first test. Lord Renfrew, distant cousin to the deceased Sir Hugo, rides in with a retinue of 6. Their pennon depicts a boar rampant, a beast famous for rooting through anything, edible or not. He demands his customary surplus, 30 stone of barley in accordance with ancient rites. The Reeve's voice cracks as he explains the new law. Lord Renfrew laughs, spittle glossing his beard. Royal parchment means nothing without spears, he says, motioning for his men to seize the granary keys. That's when the impossible happens. Father Benedict steps forward, brandishing not a cross, but a writ sealed with the king's green wax. Merchants had sold him the scroll 4 weeks back. He spent his every saved coin on it. He reads aloud, "Any knight who violates parish stores in this year of grace shall remit thrice the grain taken or forfeit lands equal in yield." The retinue hesitates. Law is persuasive, but steel decides. Your fellow villagers stand behind Benedict, pitchfork handles white in their grips. Lord Renfrew calculates. A skirmish might kill him, definitely delays harvest on his estate. With a grunt that sounds like a curse and a cough combined, he reins about. As he departs, you exhale for what feels like the first time since winter began. But Benedict warns, victory breeds envy. Fortify your doors. Harvest 1317 arrives with startling gentleness. Fields shimmer gold under skies politely blue. You slice barley stalks that thrum with life rather than resignation. Yields approach pre-famine averages. The granary brims so full that rats run out of corners to hide. You implement the Lombard pepper as deterrent. Sprinkle it along floorboards. Rodents sneeze themselves senseless and flee. Success tastes spicy warm. At Michaelmas, villagers hold a feast not seen in 2 years. Geese roast over pits, bread stacks shoulder high, and the saffron you stored perfumes puddings thick with goat's milk. Musicians conjure tunes that had hibernated in muscle memory through the long hunger. Even Father Benedict claps off-beat, half-tipsy on nettle ale. Yet plenty introduces new dilemmas. Surpluses tempt theft. Reviving commerce attracts outsiders. A traveling preacher arrives preaching that the famine was God's wrath for women wearing lace. He calls for a lace-burning pyre. The miller's daughter hurls a stale loaf at him. The crowd erupts in laughter, and the preacher departs humiliated. You note how quickly fear morphs into superstition once bellies fill. Winter 1317-18 steals in discreetly. No record-shattering blizzards, just a curt reminder that seasons still command respect. Thanks to the charter, rations remain steady. Nights grow long, but not hopeless. Around hearth, families trade stories of frost demons defeated by cunning bakers who laced dough with angel breath, of saints who warmed rivers with kiers, of bakers, like you, they tease, who smuggled sunshine into loaves. Laughter mends fractures the famine left. You spend evenings copying grain tallies into a leather ledger, ink borrowed from Father Benedict's dwindling supply. Each line feels like brickwork of a future fortress, knowledge protecting against the next weather rebellion. One stormy midnight, you pause mid-column, listening to hail pepper the shutters, and realize you're no longer counting to survive, but to plan. That spring, the Crown dispatches inspectors to collect data on parish charters. An auditor named Mistress Hawes arrives astride a mule, ledger under arm. She quizzes you on spoilage rates, rat control, rotation of root crops. When she samples your chestnut locust bread, her eyebrows spring upward. "Innovation from desperation," she murmurs, jotting notes. Days later, she posts a parchment at the church door. "This parish declared exemplary in grain governance, model to be replicated." Father Benedict beams. The reeve pounds your back so hard you nearly swallow your own tongue. 3 years after the killer winter, travelers passing through marvel at the village's tidy granary and diversified plots, beans intercropped with barley, beehives beside nettle beds to lure pollinators. Children now play rat catcher as sport, rewarded with penny tokens redeemable for berry hand pies you bake on feast days. Hunger's ghost still wanders, but mostly as cautionary tale. On Midsummer Eve, 1320, a council fire crackles. Villagers propose naming the rebuilt bridge St. Saffron Span in honor of the spice loaf that tethered hope. You're asked to inscribe the dedication plaque because your numbers, everyone agrees, look more elegant than your letters. You print carefully. From coldest night, warmest bread. From bitter seed, strongest harvest. As fireflies blink over newly planted rye, you bite into a slice of bread sweetened not by scarcity, but by choice. Honey drizzled, pepper kissed, embroidered with saffron threads. Somewhere beyond the tree line, another winter readies its siege engines. Yet this time, you feel prepared, armored not with steel, but with ledgers, laws, and the unkillable knowledge that communities can outlast even the sky's worst moods when they count every crumb together. The first thing you notice as the year 1321 dawns isn't the temperature. It's the silence. No frantic crowing from the cockerel, no creak of wagon wheels, not even the usual dawn coughs drifting from neighboring cottages. It feels as if the whole village is holding its breath, half afraid that speaking too loudly might call another murderous winter out of hiding. You wrap a wool cloak around your shoulders, step outside, and smell wood smoke mingled with the faint sweetness of thawed earth. Perhaps quiet can be a good omen, you think, until a single mournful bell tolls from the church tower. Before we open that door together, do me and the algorithm a kindness. Drop a like if you've ever pulled a blanket tighter on a cold night. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this saga. And tell me in the comments what comfort food would keep you slogging through a medieval ice age. All set? Let's push through the hush. The bell summons the parish to an urgent assembly. Inside the nave, wax stubs flicker in wall sconces, casting giant shadows that flit across saints and sinners alike. Father Benedict, cheeks gaunt from fasting, unfurls a letter sealed with red wax, the royal crest commanded by the new regent, Queen Isabella herself. Distant wars in Flanders have drained coin from coffers once promised to rebuild roads and dikes. The crown now politely requests an extraordinary levy, 30% of all parish grain stores to feed mercenaries campaigning overseas. Murmurs ripple down the pews like mice in the rafters. The charter that saved you 2 winters ago protects parish grain from local lords, but does it shield against a queen's demand? Eyes pivot toward you, granary warden, unlikely steward of life and death. Your stomach knots the way dough does when too little water meets too much salt.
The reeve clears his throat. "We owe loyalty," he begins, "but we also owe survival." Silence deepens until even the candles seem to listen. Then a widow named Agnes, half-blind yet fearlessly direct, rises. She cradles a barley loaf that spent the night on her hearthstone. "My husband fought King Edward's war in Scotland," she says. He came home missing 2 fingers from frostbite and a quarter of his promised pay. If the queen wants bread, she can shorten her banquets first. Murmurs turn to nods.
Father Benedict lifts a hand for calm. He suggests a compromise. Dispatch envoys bearing a token tithe, 10%, and a ledger proving last year's yields barely returned to normal. Let the crown read the numbers, he says, and pray ink sways where swords might otherwise. The parish votes before noon. Again, unanimity blooms where fear once rooted. You spend the next 3 nights triple copying ledgers by rushlight, digits cramped around goosequill. When the parchment absorbs its final blot of ink, you exhale as if releasing months of trapped winter air. 2 messengers, young Thomas the Cooper and Marjorie the Beehive Keeper, strap the scrolls to their belts and ride toward London, hooves splashing through early spring mud. Spring itself arrives with theatrical flair. Meadowlarks trill over greening commons, and the millstream, unclogged of ice, churns so merrily if one were delirious enough. Children build miniature dams of pebbles and broken roof tiles, imitating the Dutch dike stories traders carried here. Meanwhile, adults plan something grander, a communal barn raising that would store not only grain, but salted fish, smoked venison, and the new darling crop, field peas imported by merchants who promise they thrive even when the sky sulks. Your role expands from baker to construction quartermaster. You draft supply lists on scraps of hide, oak beams, iron nails, pine tar to waterproof the roof. The blacksmith hammers day and night, sparks arcing like meteors behind his thatch eaves. You bake hardtack for workers, flour, water, a whisper of rosemary, so durable it could outlive the next plague. No one complains. Even bland bread tastes of hope when eaten around a shared fire. Word arrives midsummer. Queen Isabella accepted the reduced tithe. The messenger's ledger impressed royal clerks. Her advisors, wary of unrest, settled for coin raised by taxing silk imports instead. Relief washes through the parish like warm ale, but Father Benedict tempers celebration. The crown's mercy isn't endless, he warns. Neither is the sky's. You pocket that thought like a cinder in cloth, small but capable of starting wildfires. By autumn, the new barn towers above cottages, beams dark with pine tar, roof thatched so thick it could muffle a thunderclap. Inside, bins partitioned by woven willow await harvest. Peas, true to rumor, quadruple expectations. Plump pods rattling like pocketed dice. The Reeve proclaims a 3-day harvest festival. Jugglers from York perform beneath garlands of dried bean vines. And you debut a novelty, sweet pea turnovers laced with the leftover Lombard pepper. Villagers laugh, eyes streaming from the unexpected kick, and beg for seconds. Yet fortune teases. A cloud bank skulks in from the west, gravid and gray. Overnight it bursts. Rain so relentless, the ground drinks itself drunk, then vomits slime. By dawn, half the onion field lies flattened under standing water. Millstones halt, grain streamed into sacks, now clumps like mortar. Worse, the barn's southern wall weeps tar-streaked water where the joinery rushed ahead of schedule. Small cracks, but enough to invite rot if neglected. Teams scramble to shore it up. You spear straw into gaps, smear clay, hammer shingles where thatch thinned. It works, for now, but the message is clear. Abundance incites complacency. Complacency breeds ruin. That night, Father Benedict reads from Ecclesiastes. The clouds full of rain empty themselves upon the earth. His voice drops. And so may pride empty itself upon men who think they have tamed the seasons. A log pops in the hearth, and embers spray like sparks from a forge, reminding everyone how fast comfort can ignite into chaos. Winter 1321 unfurls with unsettling inconsistency. One week, frost feathers every window. The next, rain drums rooftops until icicles collapse like dying bells. You adapt bakery routines. Start doughs at midnight to beat freezing dawns. Stoke ovens longer to combat damp. Still, loaves emerge with unpredictable crusts. Some brittle as slate, others soggy in the middle. Patrons roll them in cloth and shrug. Edible variance beats famine. Inside the granary, however, moisture is enemy number one. Pea sacks sweat. Barley sprouts tiny white threads, early mold. You and the ledgemen rotate stock under smoking torches, hang charcoal pouches to absorb damp, sprinkle salt where mice might nibble. Each measure feels like a whispered prayer to Saint Saffron's span. Then, on Candlemas, the disaster you feared since the charter emerges not from sky, but from within, smoldering resentment. A faction led by William Taylor argues the barn's wealth should be privatized. Why should my surplus peas feed layabouts? He demands at council. His supporters, smallholders who prospered trading flax, echo him. The vote to dissolve communal stores fails, yet fault lines crack through friendships like thawing ice. You leave the meeting stunned, aware that the deadliest winter forged solidarity, but prosperity tests it. Father Benedict corners you outside. Breath fogs between you. Crisis births saints, he says, but comfort breeds accountants. You laugh despite yourself. Still, the words cut deep. Stewardship must evolve beyond ledgers. It must inspire allegiance even when bellies are full. Lent arrives. To reset minds and stores alike, Father Benedict proposes a grand tally of gratitude, an inventory not of grain but of mercies. Each household must declare one blessing earned since the famine. Some list newborns, others repaired roofs. One widow offers her regained taste for music after grief. William Taylor, arms folded, mutters, but finally concedes his flax profits funded a new well for his tenants. The exercise thaws egos. For a moment, community feels tangible again, like warm dough beneath palm. Later, you spark a smaller idea. A grain guild where members buy shares in next season's harvest, earning dividends in bread or seed. Shared risk, shared reward. William Taylor begrudgingly invests, proof that even skeptics respect arithmetic. You draft parchment contracts. The blacksmith stamps each with a crude sheaf emblem. Summer 1322 vindicates the plan. Pea fields double again. Flax blooms blue across horizons. Bees cluster like gold dust on nettle flowers. Insects hum so loud they drown gossip. The barn, now weathertight, receives bounty beyond storage capacity. Surplus is sold to a monastic caravan bound for Norwich. Profits buy iron plowshares and, luxury of luxuries, 2 glass panes for the church's east window. When sunlight pierces the colored glass at dawn, it paints the altar red gold like grain before harvest. Villagers gasp, some kneel. Even William Taylor smiles. And yet, the climate's dice tumble anew. Late July stands humid, oppressive. Clouds pile like siege towers on the horizon. On the eve of Lammas, thunder cracks the sky open, and rain descends not in sheets, but walls. Streams breach banks, newly cleared pea plots drown. Worse, lightning strikes the steeple. Flames lick cedar shingles, devouring the bell tower. Buckets form a line, but deluge and fire wrestle overhead, one feeding, one quenching, until dawn reveals charred beams jutting like ribs from a scorched corpse of timber. Ash flakes drift onto the altar's fresh glass, pocking the painted wheat with gray blemishes. Father Benedict's shoulders sag, yet his voice remains firm. We lost wood and stone, not spirit. You volunteer the guild's profits to purchase new bell metal. Others pledge labor, lumber, or sheep. Even children donate handfuls of hazelnuts saved for winter. Reconstruction begins under skies still bruised with storm memory. As you oversee mason crews, a messenger arrives. Marjorie, the beehive keeper turned royal envoy. She dismounts, face ashen. The Queen's levy returns, this time with force. War in Gascony bleeds silver. The crown demands either grain equivalent or conscripts. 1 sack per household or 1 son, the seal decrees. The council gathers among half-built scaffolds. Tension thickens air already redolent of charred oak. Granary reserves can cover the levy, but only by emptying contingency bins. The reeve argues for payment in grain. William Taylor counters with conscripts, certain his flax wealth will buy his own son's exemption. Muttered curses swirl. Father Benedict closes his eyes. At last he speaks. We honor our obligations, but we dictate terms. Your guild charter offers a way. Pool grain from dividend shares while preserving core reserves. Each investor relinquishes a portion. Not investors work extra harvest shifts in exchange for guild credit. It's messy math, but fairer than conscripting the poor. Even William Taylor sees merit. His ledger reveals it's cheaper to seed peas than sons. A vote passes at dawn. Autumn finds the barn lighter, but not empty. Conscript officers depart with wagons of grain and a promise of royal favor. Whether goodwill reaches common folk is uncertain, but resentment diffused. Reclad in new shingles, the bell tower rises again, topped by a copper vane shaped like Saint Saffron's loaf, your joke turned emblem. The first toll of the new bell reverberates through vales, mixing with bird call and mill-wheel splash. One crisp evening, you slice bread beside Agnes the widow. She examines the crumb. Even, moist, flecked with pea flour and cracked pepper. We feared ice, she says, but learned to dread comfort's cracks more. You nod, recalling cracked barn walls, cracked alliances, cracked glass. Yet each fissure became an avenue for light or growth. Father Benedict, now frailer, tasks you with training a successor in grain stewardship. Young Eleanor, once a rat catcher, now literate and quick with sums. You teach her ledgers, moisture checks, pepper lines to deter vermin. She asks why you still sprinkle saffron in festival loaves when cheaper marigold would color just as bright. You answer, because people remember the smell of the night they survived. Years pass. Winters cycle mild to harsh, but none mimic 1316's cruelty. The parish becomes legend. Minstrels sing of Saint Saffron's span. Scholars arrive to study your guild model. Royal decrees reference your barn. Yet you remain baker first. Every dawn you score loaves with a pattern, a sunburst radiating from a single vertical cut. Winter's ice cracked by light. Customers trace it with fingertips before biting in, perhaps unaware of its origin, but comforted nonetheless.
And when storms rumble or politics rumble louder, villagers gather under the barn's tar-dark beams, breathing grain-scented air that once spelled mere survival, now prosperity. They'll point to ledgers hanging on pegs, pages browned but legible, and recount how a community, armed with numbers, courage, and the brazen audacity to defy hunger, reforged itself. The cold smell of parchment and iron ink greets you before the first rooster dares to break the thin dawn. You're in the granary loft again, where the ledgers sleep on pegs like wary sentries, and today's task is stranger than any you imagined back when loaves froze solid on the hearth. You must weigh a king's promise against a parish's patience. Before we slide that scale onto the table, nudge the buttons that keep this channel breathing. A tap of the like icon, a quick subscribo et commento in the language of medieval clickbait, and in the comments, tell me which royal reform you'd accept in exchange for your winter stores. Coin, roads, or maybe just guaranteed summer sunshine. All right, scroll rolls up, lanterns lit. Let's open the next chapter. You begin in Westminster, where the year 1323 unspools beneath banners still soot-stained from a fire nobody has confessed to starting. Royal clerks guide you down a corridor lined with tapestries of saints feeding multitudes. Irony clings to the wool. Every stitched loaf looks plump, every chalice bottomless, yet you know the court pantry barely feeds its own pages. The famine's ripple reached even here. Honey wine now tastes of watered vinegar, and the king's council bickers daily about whether to devalue coin or squeeze more grain from counties like yours. You've arrived as expert witness, summoned by Mistress Hawes's glowing report. At a cedar table so polished you can see candle flames dancing in its grain, you spread your ledgers while barons mutter. One, Lord Mallory, taps a jeweled finger on the entries. Local autonomy, he scoffs, breeds uppity villagers. You inhale, recall nights of counting rat droppings and frozen loaves, and answer steadily. Local autonomy bred 423 excess sacks in 2 years. Enough surplus to pay your levy without rebellion. The baron's finger stills. Queen Isabella herself appears, tall, silver circlet glinting like frost. She studies your columns, then asks a single question. Could every shire copy this? You choose honesty over flattery. Every shire could, Majesty, but only if lords yield a sliver of command. The circle of nobles stiffens. Isabella's eyes narrow, not with anger, but calculation. At last she turns to her steward. Draft an ordinance. Parish guild charters permitted upon remittance of modest tithe.
We shall call it the Winter Resilience Act. Pen scratches parchment, power shifts inches. You leave the hall shaken, exhilarated, terrified. Fletchers and heralds will debate for months, but the seed is planted. Conditions for a realm-wide loom of community barns. Outside, London stinks of warmed sewage and brewing hops, a weirdly comforting reminder that not all crises smell of death. You buy peppered chestnut cakes from a street vendor, share them with beggar children who grin, cheeks smeared nut brown. For a heartbeat, the city feels like your village after frost receded, bruised but breathing. Back home, summer labor's pulse. Eleanor, the former rat catcher you're training, keeps ledgers in tighter script, curling tails beneath every G. She invents a color code, green ink for incoming grain, red for outflow, blue for experimental crops. Soon, parchment blooms like stained glass. You worry colors will confuse the reeve. Instead, he boasts to neighboring manors that his barn glitters with scholarship. Pride, you realize, fertilizes change as surely as manure. But pests adapt. Banded weevil beetles, likely hitchhikers from Flemish wool bales, swarm barley sacks in July. They chew spirals through burlap, leaving trails of powdery ruin. Eleanor proposes storing grain in ceramic amphorae, costly, heavy, but airtight. The guild votes yes. William Taylor grumbles about expense until reminded amphorae keep flaxseed too. 12 potters shape jars big as toddlers. Glazes dry in sun hot enough to make even the church bell sweat. Then trouble gallops over the ridge. Sir Lionel of Norham, a younger cousin of the late Sir Hugo, hungry for a slice of your legend. He claims hereditary right to quarter share of all innovations. Translation, he wants guild profits. Armed men pitch camp by the mill stream. Smoke from their cook fires mixing with chaff dust. Dangerous combination. Father Benedict, voice shaky but eyes bright, counsels negotiation under truce flag. You meet Sir Lionel at dusk inside the half-finished glass house where beeswax candles scent the air. Eleanor brings the guild's charter. The knight brings a scroll of genealogies thicker than your thigh. His claim is flimsy. His ancestor once married the sister of a steward who rented land here. But bloodlines, like mold, spread where damp law allows. He demands not grain, but license to tax any trade through the parish. Essentially, he wants a toll booth on prosperity. You counter with numbers. Show how each assize increases output, how surplus already flows upward in levies and tithes. Sir Lionel sips mulled ale, eyes flicking between parchment and potential hostages outside. At last, he proposes a duel of arithmetic. If his steward can find irregularities, toll rights are his. If not, he withdraws. Confident in your ledgers, you agree. 3 days later, Lionel fumes as his steward concedes defeat. Eleanor's blue and red annotations foil every attempted audit. The knight rips his scroll, rides off muttering about fusspots with quills. Victory tastes like oatcake dipped in honey. Yet you note how fragile safety is, hinging on ink, not pikes. You decide to teach basic accounts to every able child. Knowledge armor beats steel when steel belongs to strangers. Autumn harvest peaks. Pea vines droop heavy. Barley heads nod like bishops in prayer. You schedule threshing crews in 4 shifts, sunrise to starlight, so no rainstorm steals kernels. Between turns, workers nap on straw under eaves still smelling of last month's smoke. Lullabies drift from lips cracked by wind, ballads of saints who blessed ovens, mothers who turned tears to broth. You hum along, hands shelling peas, and realize songs preserve data too. Rhythms encode planting times, cures, warnings, oral ledgers older than ink. On All Hallows' Eve, children parade in sheepskin masks, clacking rib bones as they beg for sweet pea turnovers. You supply dozens, each stamped with the sunburst score. Agnes the widow blesses you. A famine memory that leaves sugar on tongues. God likes that twist. You hope so. Yet, while peasants celebrate, merchants whisper of distant upheaval. In Italy, bankers refuse English debt. In Flanders, weavers strike for bread allowances. In Norway, fish harvests fail after a freak ice purge. It seems the great winter's ghost circles the hemisphere, rattling coffers now that it's done rattling stomachs. Your guild might be template for survival, or a lone candle before another gust. Late November. A courier bearing the Queen's crest dismounts in a spray of mud. He delivers 2 documents. First, royal approval. Your parish officially designated Charter Barn Exemplary, exempt from future corn levies for 5 years. Cheers erupt loud enough to scare roosting pigeons. Second, a subclause. Your village must host a royal symposium next Whitsuntide, teaching stewards across England how to replicate your methods. The good news, influence. The bad, 6 months to prepare bedding, bread, and bilingual signage for dozens of dignitaries. Preparations consume winter. Carpenters add guest lofts above the cider press. Scribes copy treatises on moisture thresholds, kiln temperatures, pea rotation. You and Eleanor draft lesson schedules. Dawn inspection of amphorae. Noon workshop on rat pepper lines. Twilight roundtable on guild financing. Father Benedict rehearses a sermon titled Faith in Fractions, comparing parable loaves to ledger columns. Snow arrives. Moderate, manageable. Children pack it atop strawberry beds like protective quilts. You test bread recipes fortified with hazelnut flour, extra protein for visiting knights, and rosewater glaze, flavor for their ladies. William Taylor funds a banner emblazoned with the sunburst loaf. He jokes it'll lure foreign coin faster than pilgrimage relics. Whitsuntide 1324 dawns clear. Delegates ride in. Stewards from Kent, reeves from Northumberland, even monks from Avignon wearing scarlet slippers that sink in meadow soil. They gape at the barn's dark pine, at amphorae stacked like legion shields, at ledgers color-coded like a feast day window. You worry they'll see only novelty, not necessity. Morning lessons unfold. Eleanor demonstrates mold spot detection by torch. Children chant the rhyme she wrote. Blue fuzz, green doom, move the sack, save the room. Laughter anchors memory. Father Benedict's sermon draws murmurs when he equates hoarding to the sin of sloth. Idle grain rots, active grain multiplies. Some lords shift uncomfortably. Afternoon debates spark. A steward from Sussex claims charter barns threaten feudal grain rents. A friar counters that starving tenants pay no rent at all. Numbers fly, bushels, florins, mortality rates. You display graphs inked on linen, bars rising after each innovation. Eyes widen, math persuades where morality wavers. By dusk, consensus wobbles but holds. The model merits trial with local tweaks. Banquet follows. You serve pepper peas, saffron puddings, oat cakes shaped like tiny barns. Delegates praise flavors, ask for recipes. Music mingles lutes with hammer taps on amphora rims, echoing like distant drums of war or progress. Under lantern glow, you glimpse a future where famine memories guide policy, not panic. Yet politics simmer. A messenger slips you rumor. Prince Edward, now of age, resents his mother's leniency toward peasants. He may revoke exemptions? You meet Eleanor at the ledger desk, candles guttering. "What if the crown flips again?" she asks. You run a palm over parchment smooth with use. Then we teach faster than power changes. Knowledge spreads like mold, too, only sweeter. Summer wanes. Delegates depart with sample amphorae rattling in carts. Some leave coin donations. Others leave letters of caution. Lords displeased, clergy skeptical. But seeds scatter. Weeks later, riders deliver news. Kent has adopted color-coded ledgers. Norfolk built rat-proof bins. A Welsh abbey ordered 300 pounds of Lombard pepper. The network grows, fragile yet alive. Autumn 1324. A new threat, wheat rust, stripes fields with red pustules. Thanks to symposium notes, your farmers identify it early, burn infected sheaves, and save half the harvest. Neighboring villages lacking such knowledge lose nearly all. Refugees arrive, gaunt and desperate. The council votes, over William Taylor's objections, to open guild reserves, trading bread for labor rebuilding dikes. Some mutter you're indulging charity too far. Others recall a widow's saffron loaf that once redeemed them. The vote passes. Refugees swell cottages, bringing stories of ruined manors where lords blamed rust on witchcraft, burning suspected herbal hags. Your village shelters two such women, sisters with berry-stained hands who brewed teas against cough. They teach you elderflower poultices that soothe frostbitten toes. In return, you teach them ledger basics. They marvel at red ink, say it reminds them of rowan berries. Midwinter 1324 unleashes the coldest fortnight since 1316. Bread left on windowsills crystallizes. Amphorae sweat ice. Yet stores hold, fires burn, and no one dies. Children skate on the frozen mill pond, tying reeds to their boots for makeshift blades. Under silver moonlight, they carve loops that mirror the sunburst score on your loaves, a symbol now etched into winter's mirror. Your health falters. Hands ache from years of kneading. Ink stains your nails permanently blue. Eleanor handles day ledgers. You advise, pace slower. Father Benedict, increasingly frail, names her deacon of grain stewardship. During Imbolc candles, he presses a sunburst-scored loaf to her chest and murmurs, "Guard this pattern, it cracks darkness." He dies that night, peace on his face, saffron scent still on his beard. The funeral fills fields, delegates, beggars, knights, and those herbal hags carrying rosemary branches. They scatter pepper on his grave, spice against spiritual rats. Bells peal from the rebuilt tower, each toll echoing charity's account kept in ink and memory. You taste tears and saffron at once. Spring 1325 sets tasks anew. Election of a new parish priest, expansion of the barn to house medicinal herbs, drafting the first weather clause in guild bylaws. If frost sheets fields before Michaelmas, dividend ratios shift automatically. Autonomy codified, not begged for. Prince Edward ascends the throne in July. His first decree raises levies on pepper imports. Guild members groan. There goes rat deterrent. But Eleanor proposes wild mint as substitute. Tests show mice hate mint more than pepper. You smile. Adaptation outpaces edict. In August, William Taylor, now a convert, establishes a school of practical numeracy in his old flax warehouse. Children copy ledgers on scrap linen, learning decimals via grain weights. One small boy insists on coloring margins blue and red like Master Eleanor. The tradition propagates. On the anniversary of the great winter's first frost, you stand on St. Saffron's span, watching river mist curl. A fish leaps, silver flash, then ripples fade. You think of the ledger columns stretching behind you, of amphorae rows, of colored inks mapping a kingdom's slow pivot from crisis to craft. A stranger approaches, tired, cloak travel-stained. He asks if this is the parish that taught hunger to do sums. You nod. He hands you a scroll, wax seal of York. Their barns failed. Could you send trainers? You promise help, knowing Eleanor will lead the mission. She appears beside you, sunburst loaf cradled in a cloth. You break it together, steaming crumb in cold air, and pass halves to the stranger. He tastes, eyes widening. Pepper? He asks. You wink. Mint, evolution in every bite. As dusk settles, you draft a final ledger note. Surplus exported, knowledge. Then you set quill down, flex aching fingers, and realize the winter that turned bread to ice birthed something harder to shatter, the will to count, share, and adapt. News rides in on a gelding lathered white. York has accepted Eleanor's guild methods, but the northern dales confront something stranger than rust. Black snow, they call it. Soot-laden drifts birthed from distant peat fires and coal forges. The flakes coat barley awns in tarry film, stopping photos in their tracks. Eleanor plans to travel north with mint seed and colored ledgers, and she insists you accompany her. One more journey, though your spine aches like worm-eaten oak. You agree, suspecting the kingdom's tilt requires older eyes to steady. Before departure, you secure your home base. Young ledger apprentices, Giles, Maeve, and Oswin, swear to maintain amphora seals daily, blue chalking any vessel that sweats more than a finger's width. William Taylor, now Sir William, after a quaint lighthood for civic virtue, funds a new rat mint perimeter, setting clay pots of the pungent herb at every archway. He's still loud, still loves profit, yet you've seen him hand a saffron bun to a coughing orphan without theatrics. People can molt, it seems, if winter is long enough. You leave at Candlemas. Roads churn to syrupy mud slow the train of carts, full of seed, amphorae, copies of the Winter Resilience Act bound in stiff vellum. While wheelwrights pry stones from spokes, you teach children along the verge. They trace sunburst scores in the muck, giggling when patterns resemble flowers. Loaf daisies, they christen them. The nickname sticks. By the time you cross the Humber, roadside inns decorate doors with chalk loaf daisies as wards against scarcity. York's air bites with coal tang. Inside the cathedral chapter house, canons in sable robes shuffle parchment petitions for pepper allowances. Miners' wives plead for bread not blackened by soot. Eleanor presents her case. Amphorae resist ash, mint repels vermin. Blue-red ledgers reveal leaks in supply networks. Some clergy accept, others protest, southern meddling. The dean, gray-eyed as frost, grants a trial if you can cleanse the city's communal ovens of soot residue that turns dough bitter. Local bakers guide you into the brick-arched hearts of their trade, ovens so wide a grown man could lie star-shaped on the hearth. Their fireboxes caked with tar, their chimneys clogged. You recall an old Flemish trick. Line the chimney walls with wet straw. Ignite a rapid flare that scours soot like a dragon's sneeze. The bakers balk, risk cracks in valuable brick, but hunger overrides fear. They trust you. One twilight, straw smolders, flames roar, soot flakes drift like charred snow in the alley. By dawn, ovens breathe clean. Loaves emerge pale gold, no bitter crust. The dean tastes one, chews, exhales relief. Trial 1. York forms its own guild within weeks, the Brotherhood of Loaf Daisy, adopting color codes plus a yellow stripe signifying soot inspections. Apprentices there craft pamphlets titled The Mint Rat Mysteries, half instruction manual, half comic rhymes. Children devour them, literate or not, they memorize steps. You recognize a new phase, replication without you. A true system breathes on its own. Home letters arrive via riders. Prince Edward, now Edward III after a swift palace coup that sidelined his mother, drafts new taxes on innovative privities, meaning amphora glaze ingredients and colored imported inks. A royal strategist has sniffed coin in your movement. Eleanor curses, then smiles thinly. "We'll make ink from oak galls and rust," she says. You test her brew. Murky, but legible. Adaptation again. On return journey south, you stop at Lincoln. There, famine has receded, but a moral rot blooms. Grain dealers manipulate supply, hoarding until price peaks. You negotiate, threaten exposure with transparent ledgers. When that fails, you stage a public weighing, inviting townsfolk to compare sealed guild sacks to dealer stock. They gasp at discrepancies. Market shouts rise, hoarders relent. You leave Lincoln with uneasy respect for mob power harnessed by math. Back home, spring tillage hums. Refugees you sheltered now run a mint field outside the walls. Bright green sea where once lay frost-browned stubble. They host a mint fair, selling sachets to traveling merchants. Profit flows into a communal medical fund. Your village evolves from survival engine to socio-economic laboratory. Scholars arrive, scribbling on wax tablets, calling it the miracle of loaf daisies. You correct them. Miracles are cheap. Diligence costs elbows. Yet threat brews. Sir Lionel returns, not with swords, but parchment. A royal patent granting him exclusive right to collect knowledge tithe for any lecture delivered in his county. He demands 15% of mint fair profits and a seat on your guild council. This patent bears Edward III's seal, Gold, unbreakable in court. The community frets. William Taylor proposes paying to avoid trouble. Eleanor fumes. You schedule midnight meetings by lantern in the granary lot. Scrolls scattered like a battlefield of ideas. Father Benedict's successor, young Prior Aldwin, offers sly counsel. Patents bind only those named. If knowledge travels via song, who is lecturer? A loophole forms. You craft a plan, shift all instruction into public festivals, teaching through plays, ballads, loaf daisy dances. Information becomes performance, free to witness, hard to tax. Sir Lionel arrives to collect. Villagers greet him with a maypole swirl, children chanting storage equations between verses. He cannot identify a single lecture. His steward takes notes, baffled. Lionel storms away, patent, impotent. But even as you outmaneuver aristocrats, nature schemes. Summer 1326 scorches fields. Mint wilts, barley shrivels. Amphorae guard grain, but fodder for oxen dwindles. Without beasts, plows stall. You convene an emergency moot. Eleanor suggests alternate traction. Human crews with shoulder yokes. Less efficient, but workable. Giles drafts rotation schedules. Each adult pulls for an hour daily, trading sweat for communal bread credits. Labor grinds, but seeds enter soil before late summer storms. The storms arrive biblical. Thunderheads clang like smithies. Hailstones bruise apples to cider. Yet seedlings endure, shielded by straw mats you learn to weave in York. Harvest small but certain. That night, you radio across time, ink on parchment to all guilds. Share straw mat guide. Copyists replicate by dawn. Riders disperse. Network synergy flexes beneath weather's gauntlet. Late autumn. Drums of politics echo again. Rumor says Edward III eyes France. He seeks grain levies to feed armies. Your charter barns glitter like dragon hordes in royal ledgers. A taxation envoy appears, flanked by scribes and men-at-arms. He respects procedure, offers royal warrant, lists requisition numbers. They equal 3 winters of your surplus. Surrender would shatter local safety net. Refusal is treason. Village council convenes beneath the thatch-roofed guild hall. Debate rages until Oswin, the freckled apprentice once shy as a dormouse, stands, holding Father Benedict's sunburst loaf mold. "Let's pay in knowledge," he squeaks. Idea lands like acorn on oak deck, small but seed. You draft counterproposal. Instead of grain, provide the crown with strategic spread of the resilience model to garrisons, promising higher long-term yield. Edward's envoy laughs until you present graphs. Fortified outposts adopting your system require 30% fewer supply wagons, freeing army carts. Numbers, again, slay skepticism. 2 tense weeks pass. Finally, a sealed scroll. The king accepts, on condition your guild dispatches 12 masters of the loaf daisy to castles within a year. Relief surges, but so does exhaustion. 12 masters? You have perhaps 7 fully trained. Recruitment begins. You design accelerated curricula, blending song, demonstration, and tactile math knots. Every barn becomes a classroom. Winter 1326-27 proves mild. You almost miss the hush of heavy snow until a sharp cough in your chest reminds that want doesn't hibernate. A fever grips you, lungs rattle like grain in a cracked jar. Eleanor doses you with elderflower, mint steam, honey. Between sweats, you dictate lessons to Giles, ensuring deadlines met. In fever dreams, you traverse blue-red ledgers that morph into frozen rivers. Father Benedict rides ahead on a rat the size of a cart, laughing. He points to the horizon where amphora forms city walls, and above, a sunburst loaf eclipses the moon. You wake, gasping, understanding only that knowledge needs disciples beyond you. By Candlemas you stand again, thinner. The first group of Loaf Daisy Masters departs for Dover Garrison, Giles included. He hugs you, leaves a new ledger ink he invented. Gall mixed with mint chlorophyll, hue of deep forest. Legacy ink, he jokes. Watching carts roll out, you feel both proud and obsolete, a sweet ache. Spring 1327 bursts with violets. Refugee mint fields bloom purple among green, unexpected hybrid, you name Frost Kiss. Bees love it, honey harvest doubles. Apothecaries claim Frost Kiss tincture eases lung ailments, you nod approval. Prosperity returns, but so does complacency. Some towns forget to inspect amphorae. Mold erupts in Winchester, causing a minor bread scare. You send Oswin, now a certified master, to troubleshoot. He writes back, complacency equals shadow behind sunburst. You add the line to training manuals. Sir Lionel surfaces once more, bearing a fresh patent, exclusive rights to Frost Kiss mint trade. This time, villagers laugh openly. While Lionel pursued legal tricks, you registered the plant as common parish heritage under the very Winter Resilience Act he once ignored. Patent void. Lionel smolders, but no longer threatens. His revenue lies elsewhere. Summer sunsets lengthen. Festival of Loaf Daisies draws visitors from Castile, the Empire, even a Moorish scholar from Granada curious about cold climate resilience. Lanterns hang between amphora towers. Children reenact the Great Winter Story using ice loaves sculpted from salted snow kept in deep pits. When the ice bread cracks under torchlight, audience gasps, then cheers as actors reveal warm mint loaves inside. Symbolism heavy as stone, yet hearts soar. The Moorish scholar gifts you an abacus of olive wood and bone beads. Demonstrates decimal shorthand that makes ledger math lightning fast. You give him Frost Kiss seed in return. Knowledge barter continues the infinite ledger. That night, you sit atop the granary roof, knees blanketed, watching constellations swirl. Eleanor joins, sets 2 cups of nettle mint tea steaming. She says, the network now spans 28 charter barns, 7 royal garrisons, 4 abbeys. It lives, she whispers. You squeeze her calloused hand. Somewhere below, apprentices laugh, music drifts. You realize your village has become a university disguised as a barn. But horizon clouds gather, quite literal. Mariners report temperature dips in Iceland, strange sea ice tongues creeping south. Scholars fret we may face another great winter. You recall your fever dream's sunburst eclipsing the moon. Omen or nonsense? Either way, part of you steadies. If cold descends, you've built armored barns of wood, clay, ink, and community. You draft the very first Contingency Ledger 0, instructions to reboot the entire system if central records burn. Memorize the sunburst score, teach color code through song, bury amphora in frost-free caves. Redundancy becomes religion. Children chant, blue fuzz, green doom, sunburst loaf, harvest bloom, skipping rope as they recite, oral encryption of survival. Your cough lingers. You sense life's ledger entering final columns. But there's work. Finalize charter for a traveling mint and maths caravan. Stage plays in towns yet unreached. Finish the Frostkiss Honey Treatise for Physicians College. Eleanor protests your pace. You remind her Father Benedict worked till last breath. She relents, helps compile notes, pressing each page with a loaf daisy watermark. On Michael Michael's Eve, a blood-orange moon rises. Villagers gather round the barn, amphorae ringing them like Stonehenge pillars. You address them, voice shaky but clear, recounting the journey from bread to ice to loaf daisy. You present a sealed chest containing ledgers, seeds, and the abacus to be kept for generations. Giles's little sister, Maeve, now taller than you imagined, locks the chest, buries the key under the mint field. Lanterns wink out one by one. Stars intensify. Crickets sing. Somewhere an owl hoots. You breathe cool air smelling of mint and straw, and feel peaceful knowing the ledger posts will stand without your hammer. The season has changed too soon. Sheep wear double-layered wool and still shiver. Geese abandon ponds already skinned with ice. Orchards drop apples hard as sling stones. You're older now, cane, not quill in hand. But when villagers huddle in the guild hall, eyes wide as candle flames, you must answer the same question that echoed back in 1316. How do we keep the loaves from turning to ice? You summon the council. Eleanor, now chief steward in her own right. Sir William Taylor, grayer yet still swaggering. Prior Aldwin with Frostkiss honey poultice recipes. The refugee sisters, Marta and Runa, who've become botanists of every weed that pokes through rhyme. Giles and Oswin send letters from distant garrisons. The north already reports sleet in August. The south storms with hail big enough to kill piglets. This, you all realize, is not weather. It's a realm-wide stress test. First measure, secure reserves. Apprentices inventory amphorae, chalking daisy blue lines on any jar losing seal. Second measure, distribute frost-kissed mint seeds to every window box and hedge. Rodents flee before the cold squeezes them into granaries. Third, revive the old night watch baking, keeping ovens warm round the clock so frost can't creep inside loaves before sunrise. But there's a fourth, stranger measure, your last pet project, Ledger 0 Drill. At midnight, you ring the iron bell thrice. Villagers spill into moonlit square. You recite the drill. Every child sings the color code. Every adult sketches the sunburst score in snow. Every elder repeats stock ratios aloud. 3 parts grain, 1 part legume, 1 part hope. Laughter trembles at the edges, nervous but real. When you finish, people applaud. Knowledge is habit now. muscle memory deeper than the marrow chilled by wind. Still, storms escalate. By Michaelmas, rivers grow sluggish with frazzle ice. Water wheels seize, mills fall silent. Bread must be hand ground. You turn the quern yourself, stone groaning like your knees. Eleanor calculates new work rosters, shift grinding by lantern with honeyed ale rations to keep shoulders working. Songs rise over the grumble of stone, ballads of loaf daisies and pepper lines, an audible ledger keeping morale solvent. Early November, a royal courier plows through snowdrifts taller than his mount. He carries 2 items. The first, an urgent decree from King Edward III, requisitioning half the mint harvest and 10 master bakers for the army's winter campaign in Scotland. The second, a personal note from Queen Philippa, thanking your village for frost-kiss honey that eased her child's coughing fever. The council debates through the night. Refusal courts military retaliation. Compliance risks famine at home. You craft a compromise. Send the bakers, but paired with apprentices who teach garrisons to grow windowsill mint and build amphora caches. Turn every fort into a mini charter barn. As for mint tithes, you agree to ship dried stalks once you confirm the army has dug proper storage pits. Edward's envoy, under orders to accept no half measures, sputters. Then Eleanor unfurls parchment of performance graphs from Dover Garrison, grain wastage down 40% since guild tutoring. Numbers seduce where pleas fail. He signs, seals, departs, hopefully to become a convert. Yet, supplies thinning gnaw at your dreams. You walk the rows of amphorae nightly, lantern halo shimmying across clay shoulders. In the hush, you hear tiny pings, ice expanding hairline cracks. You note each ping in a pocket notebook. By dawn, 32 jars need new pitch. Nothing lasts forever, but maybe long enough. You find comfort in small miracles. A clump of frost kiss blooming under snow, its purple petals hot to the touch. Twin lambs surviving a blizzard thanks to wool soaked in mint oil. Fleas hate mint, heat loves oil. Runa distills an essence from frost kiss and elder bark that, when rubbed on chests, freeze winter lungs. She names it Benedict's Balm. Prior Aldwin blesses the batch, confident the old priest's spirit helped brew it. As Advent candles flicker, a tragedy arrives on wooden wheels. A caravan from Kent, seized by bandits who'd stolen grain but left the people. 30 souls, gaunt, arrive at your gates begging shelter. Some council members fear overstretch. You recall the vow from years ago. Surplus exported equals knowledge. You open the barn, allocate reduced bread rations, and require newcomers to learn ledger basics within a fortnight. Earn their keep through data. They accept, and soon Kentish children whisper the color code in lilting accents, adding harmonies that make your bones hum. The bandits toward the southeast become bolder, preying on grain convoys between charter barns. Sir William proposes armed escorts, but steel costs coin and blood. Instead, you suggest publishing convoy routes publicly, along with stock tallies, making shipments unsavory targets, because everyone knows exactly what's inside and which parish will avenge. Transparency as armor. The idea feels insane, yet works. Attacks drop as villagers across shires track grain like a public game board. Snow heaps higher. Amphora stock dips. Oswin, writing from Calais Garrison, reports ice floes choking the channel, provisions delayed. He requests frost kiss seed. You pack pouches into a pigeon satchel, but doubt the birds can cross. Then you remember the channel ice and realize they can walk. Such is the upside-down logic of hard winters. One raw January morning, you collapse in the guild hall, spit streaked with blood. Eleanor orders bed rest, doses you with Benedict's balm tea. Fever dreams return. Father Benedict, Sir Hugo, and your younger self skating on the mill pond, sunburst loaf skimming like a disc across ice. You wake feeling lighter, but the cough persists. The barn's account keepers gather at bedside, present latest ledger. Reserves will last 3 months at current ration, 5 if rations cut by a quarter. You instruct the cut. Word spreads. Grumbles roll sideways like loose cartwheels. To quell despair, you schedule a midwinter feast of fractions. Tables set with bowls marking quarter portions. Musicians play in 3/4 time. Storytellers recite half-finished epics, pausing for audience to supply endings. People laugh at the absurdity and swallow smaller meals without complaint, because scarcity shared tastes less bitter. During the feast, a young woman named Isata, descendant of the Herbal Sisters, unveils a breakthrough. Bread fermented with frost-kissed pollen keeps moist longer and delivers subtle warmth when swallowed, like carrying embers behind your ribs. She gifts samples, loaves glowing faintly pink. The effect is real. Warmth blossoms from within. You anointed ember bread. Instruct bakers to reserve pollen for sick and elders first. 2 weeks later, you distribute ember bread to miners trapped after a shaft collapse. They emerge alive, swearing the loaves burned gently in their bellies. Rumor spreads faster than plague. Ember bread miracles. Pilgrims brave snow to obtain crumbs. You fear a frenzy, but also see opportunity. You draft guidelines. Every ember bread loaf sold must include free instruction on fermentation plus mint seeds. Knowledge baked into commerce. In March, ice storms slice oak limbs like knives. The school roof caves. No funds for timber. Eleanor plans levy. You propose salvage. Dismantle Sir William's unused flax warehouse roofing. He agrees, claiming, "Roof never turned profit anyway." Apprentices patch school with mismatched beams. Snow stays out. Lessons resume. Resilience is now reflex. That same month, news arrives of a comet blazing green over Scotland. Some call it dragon breath, others omen of pestilence. You worry about superstition undoing ledger logic. So you stage The Trial of the Comet, a play in the square. Children hold blue and red lanterns. One boy, masked as the comet, is placed on trial for famine. Witnesses, played by bakers, show evidence, mold spores, temperature charts. Verdict, comet guilty of spectacle, not starvation. Crowd laughs, fear dissipates. Data theater defeats Skyfire mythology, for now. But a worse mythology festers. Rumors that Frostkiss mint is witch plant draining heat from the sun. Mobs in Norfolk burn mint fields. You dispatch Giles with leaflets debunking lies, plus ember bread samples. He calms some, but hysteria lingers. You realize truth alone can't suffice. You need allies with authority. So you write Philippa the Queen, reminding her of honey that healed the prince. You enclose pollen-rich ember bread and treatise on mint's virtues. Her reply, written in her own hand, proclaims Frost Kiss Mint, herb of Saint Saffron, protected under royal decree. Torches drop, mobs disperse, you exhale relief. April ups the tempo. Multi-day blizzard